Three-point lighting is a standard lighting technique used with interviews. It has power to transform an otherwise boring and flat image into a dynamic, interesting image with a subject that pops. The goal of three-point lighting is to create the illusion of a three-dimensional subject in a two-dimensional image. While you can create dimension a number of different ways, three-point lighting is the lighting technique most commonly used. What are the 3 points of lighting we're talking about? The key light. This is the main light used on your subject. The fill light. The purpose of this light is to fill in the shadows created by the key light, preventing them from getting too dark. The backlight. This is used to separate the subject from the background. Typically, you may want to place the key light first because it's the main one, and you use the rest of the lights to support the key light. The purpose of the key light is to put the light on the subject. You can place it anywhere you want, but a common placement is about 45 degrees to either side of the camera, and about 45 degrees up from the subject. Which side of the camera should you place it depends on the look you're going for. To create standard look, whichever way the subject is facing in the frame, put the key light on that side of the camera. You can get as creative as you want with this. Try placing the key light at different angles in the elevations. You can put the key light off to one side of the subject, nearly straight out to the side, and illuminate only half of their face. This is called side lighting, because, well, they're lit from the side. If you're shooting a film, you might use side lighting to symbolically represent the conflict the character is feeling. You could also try placing the key light at a high elevation, angled higher above the subject's head but pointing down toward your subject. This placement would create deep shadows in their eye sockets, but is usually an undesirable look. But if you're trying to make the subject look sinister for some reason, you might like this technique. Another frequent placement for a key light is behind the subject. This places the entire subject in shadow, which we commonly call a silhouette. You can intentionally use this look to create a dramatic image, to keep the subject anonymous, or to de-emphasize the subject for whatever reason. Finally, another common placement, and the most boring, is right in front of the subject. The light might be directly above the camera pointing toward the subject. This is called flat video lighting. It appears to whiten the face, fills in shadows caused by wrinkles, and in the least dramatic style of lighting. This kind of lighting is sometimes called glamour lighting, because on models it can enhance the look of their face. When you turn on the key light and nothing else, you might find that the overall look of the image is too dramatic and high contrast. There might be too many deep shadows. That's where the fill light comes in. The purpose of the fill light is simply to fill in the shadows caused by the key light. Place the fill light on the opposite side of the camera from the key light. One thing to be cautious about, the fill light should not create a second shadow. If you see two shadows, that means the fill light is too powerful and needs to be reduced. You can reduce the light a number of different ways. Some lights can be dim, but it's more common that you need to either move the light further from the subject or put scrims or diffusion material over the light. You can also remove some bulbs or change the bulb to a less powerful one. Scrims are designed to reduce the light without softening it. They basically look like a net made out of metal. You can also use neutral density gels to reduce light. These gels are semi-transparent gray sheets that you can put over the light to reduce the light without changing its color. You don't have to use a separate light as a fill light. You can simply use something that reflects light from the key light and then bounce the light back towards the subject and into the shadows. This reduces the shadow darkness and creates the same effect as a fill light. Common tools for this are reflectors and white foam cardboards, but really you could use any reflective material as a fill light. Just want to make sure that it doesn't introduce any color into the shadow and it doesn't reflect too much light. It's hard to go wrong with a fill light. Use it to fill in shadows a little or a lot depending on the look you're going for. Last in our lineup is the backlight. Backlights. You got to love the glowing rim they create around the hair and shoulders of the subject. Many argue against using them because in real life people don't walk around with a glowing halo around their heads and shoulders. To create a backlight, put a light behind your subject, usually suspended above their head and behind them so it points about 45 degrees down toward their hair and back. Using barn doors on this light can be extremely helpful, so you can control the direction of the light and prevent it from accidentally spraying light in the camera lens. The only place you want this light is on the head, neck, and shoulders of your subject. 4-point lighting is at the root of most lighting setups for digital video or motion film. 3-point lighting is often discussed, especially as it relates to video interview setups, and is a very common way of presenting lights. and in a sense, 4-point lighting stems from similar principles. Though the names can be sematics, 4-point lighting is often considered to have slightly different purposes than 3-point lighting, and the exact positions and realities of the light you do use may be somewhat different. What 4-point lighting, 3-point lighting share in common is their basic lighting triangle. All three of them will employ a main light source, called the key. The opposing light that also comes from the front will be the fill. 4-point lighting will be a little looser with this, mainly because 4-point lighting is more responsive to the needs of dramatic narrative scene. Both 3-point lighting and 4-point lighting will employ a backlight to hit the subject's head. The main light that differentiates a proper 4-point lighting setup and a 3-point lighting setup is the background light. The background light is intended to give depth to the image by putting some mixture of light and shadow on the wall behind the subject or subjects. Make sure that there is several feet between the subject and the wall. Give the light that you are using an intermediary to alter the beam. A conventional use of this process is to have the background light from the 4-point lighting setup come through a window so that a graphic of the window pane will be blasted into the wall behind the subject. You can also try to use different nets, gels, or scrims to alter the background image. 4-point lighting essentially sets up a square approach, yet it tries to remain free and responsive to movement and changes. 4-point lighting is supposed to be the practical basis for most narrative film lighting, so you have the options to change it. There is no set rule for how 4-point lighting must be set up, so you are going to have to adjust and readjust until you find what fits. Just like everything in the video, the more you practice 3 and 4-point lighting, the more you'll learn how to use them, and the more fun you'll have experimenting.